and welcome in to the East County Prep Football Report. It's Week 10 with Dave Dickens of EastCountySports.com. I'm Ramon Scott. Dave, wow, can you believe it? We're already here, Week 10. We got a couple of real big, maybe three big football games coming up this Friday, and a few others we're going to talk about. Teams are battling for these league championships and also playoff berths. Don't forget about that. But first things first, we're always interested in winning a league championship and let the playoffs play out as they may, especially with the seeding and all that. Everybody up in arms. Who cares? Just get in and win some football games, and the rest will speak for itself. Dave will kind of open it up with the Grossmont Hills League. That way we can talk about the big game that you went to last week with Grossmont defeating Granite Hills to get that 1-0 start. Hats off to Grossmont, Dave. It's their time. It's their moment in the sun. The upset, if you will. We called it close. We both picked Granite Hills. I had it just maybe by a couple of points, and you also rated it as a close game. Grossmont used that home field advantage and a great passing night from Giles, over 300 yards. Great night. We got on them for not running. They didn't need to. They passed it very, very well and did a great job in defeating the Eagles. They're 1-0 in the Grossmont Hills League and ready for a big game on Friday night.
Well, first thing, I just want to explain myself before we get into that game, which was one heck of a game, and definitely didn't expect the results as they came forth. But a little bad luck in the NFL for my football team. You guys are probably mostly Charger fans out there, so you're somewhat happy. I'm definitely not happy losing 3 straight, and especially losing to the team that we did lose to. So I'm putting it on for some luck and hopefully the Orange Crush will crush Case Keenum and the Cleveland Browns that might as well pull out some injury cots for the rest of their team. But enough of that. That's my squabble for the moment. But back to the game on Friday night. Holy cow. We thought it was going to be a close one. And honestly, it really started out that way. It was 7-0 at halftime. Definitely a defensive battle. A lot of punting. Some really good punts, too, I must say. And there's our usual guest during the show, right behind always making a cameo. But at any rate, I was impressed with both defenses, special teams. I mean, they were both kicking the ball wonderfully. Even Joaquin Thomas Jr., we look at him as the running back, receiver, and especially a great defensive back. But I will tell you what, he's kicked the ball and done pretty well with that too. So I think he's a future special teamer. Even in that loss, I must say the Eagles held it together. Let's just speak on some of the things that they did do even in the loss. Burton had a nice sack of Giles, and there was actually a couple of those, and they had their share of turnovers. But I tell you what, when it came to the end of the third quarter, going on into the fourth quarter, domination is the word of the night for the Hillers. I mean, I don't know what the discussion was at halftime, but they made more than adjustments. We had the interview with Giles after that game, and he said, they just mostly made adjustments. And I commented on the running game because I've been commenting on it, for several weeks now. And they really did. You mentioned the arm of Giles, and he did have a couple of runs, but really he was able to pass because they did get some backs back there that were eating up some yards. Warsaw had somewhat of a decent game going up the middle and even breaking out a couple of sweeps. The offensive line really did a nice job. So they really brought out the playbook, and I think that it helped a little bit knowing, as Coach Holmes said, in the post game to me that, knowing the playbook somewhat for what Granite Hills is typically going to do, he said that they typically did do exactly what they thought, and they exploited those things that they were able to exploit. Thus, the final score of the 24-14. I did not see that happening. And what I really didn't expect happening, listen, Grossmont's got a great defense. I don't want to take anything away from them, but I had saw the stats of Sanders in the 2 previous games, and he'd done quite well. And I don't know what happened, but in this game, he threw quite a few ill-advised throws.
Well, I wanted to ask about that, Dave. You mentioned the defense, and Granite Hills, early on this season, their penchant for turning the ball over. Tell me about Jacob Benavente. He had 2 great interceptions in the game. They kind of came right back. One was the end of the first half, the Hail Mary, and then he came out and intercepted the first to stop the first drive of the second half, and that was a big momentum changer.
Yeah, I think that was at the point where I think the Eagles the whole coaching staff was just up in arms. I mean, because what do you do at that point? I honestly was thinking, do you pull out Tomasello and give him a shot just for a different look out there? Because all of those throws, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that Sanders made some great throws too. He also he's a great scrambler. He can run the ball quite well. He's a pretty fast kid, and he made some quite a bit of yardage himself with his legs. Had a couple of nice throws, but I think when he was trying to make those quick throws, when he was that's the whole problem. He was under duress all night long, especially in that second half. I mean, he was flushed out of that pocket immediately. Yeah. But you were saying, I want to also say, who was it?
Odom had a big sack in there.
Also, Roberts was in place of one of their injured guys. I have him on the tip of my tongue. Number 44 for the Hillers that typically would play in that spot, but Roberts, boy, he number 27. He really went in there and wreaked havoc in that backfield. A couple of sacks, actually, an assist on a sack, and then of course we don't want to forget about Ryan Odom. He's always in on the action and wreaking havoc back there as well.
Yeah, no doubt, Dave. And for all the angst that the Grossmont Foothillers have suffered this season, it's been a trying season, no doubt. They've played some tough teams, and that's been the story. We're not disregarding their record at all. They proved their worth in the victory. And, for all the trouble that they've gone through, they've arrived at the point of the season which they really seem to always aim for, and that's to play for the league championship. So the Foothillers will host the 8th-ranked Helix Highlanders for the right to compete. The winner will get at least a share of the title. So this is a championship football game on Friday night between Grossmont and Helix, Dave. Helix, of course, outlasted Steel Canyon last week behind the big fourth-quarter touchdowns from who else? Christian Washington, Dave. When Helix needs a big play from big moves, he always seems to come up in that moment. When the going's tough and he's had some big games, he's been bottled up by those Supreme teams a little bit. But get him on the same level of competition, even in a tough battle. Everyone knew Steel Canyon was still going to be a tough team, and they know Helix so well, gave him such a battle. It was really a threat. I really thought Steel Canyon was going to steal the game and get out of there with a great victory and set themselves up for a possible run at the league title. And everyone's still alive, of course, depending on what happens this Friday night. But Washington came up with those big plays, and Helix right now, in the driver's seat, I would say, just because they are the highest ranked team. They look like the best team, but Grossmont has their chance here again.
Well, I'm going to say that this year's, and not to take everything away from the Highlanders at all, but this is as good a year as any for Grossmont to take that coveted musket back to Hillersville after 30 years. That would be absolutely huge. I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers out there telling Chicagoans that he owns them. You know, of course, we know why he did that. We found out later why he did that, but that's not even ownership. 30 years of losing to the same team, that almost erased. That's not even considered a rivalry, I wouldn't think, due to the one-sidedness of that. However, I love talking to Coach Holmes because the way he looks at things are just, I think a lot of other players, coaches should look at it this way. But he said to me this evening, the focus is definitely not on him. It's on the young men, and that they have to do what they have to do to make history. It's going to be a good game against what remains a great ball club. Helix has the talent, still developing, and they can be very dangerous with the big playmaking abilities, thus Washington, as you just mentioned. And we have to limit those plays. We do think it is our year, as I had mentioned before, but we have to go in and fight for all 4 quarters. We have to be able to look each other in the eyes after the game, and when we leave everything on the field and that we were the more aggressive team, if we can finish individual plays and play with high motors, we have a good chance of bringing that musket home. I can't speak on Grossmont teams of the past, but this year's teams, group of seniors, group of young men are ready to fight. And if we dominate every play, we are determined. And if we do make all those plays, Grossmont makes history Friday night. And that's Coach Chris Holmes. I think if any other player on the Grossmont Foothillers team, I don't think anybody could have said it better than Coach Holmes if they were to fire up that squad to get ready for that big game against Helix on Helix turf.
Yeah,
that might even stir up Coach Owens and his bunch a bit.
I don't think Helix needs bulletin board material for this game. I don't think, I'm not saying that that's that either. I think that's a great motivational speech, and that's exactly what I would say to my team if I were the Grossmont Foothillers. Again, they're going to need an extraordinary effort, Dave, to come out with a good result in this game, whether they win or lose. They're going to need an extraordinary effort, I think, to keep up with the Highlanders. It's funny because we always talked about Carlo and all the years and how he was the last. He led that. We say he led that team because he was the quarterback, and he was a good quarterback, very good quarterback, obviously. But
at Grossmont College too.
Yeah, and but Etheridge, Eskridge was the one who scored the 4 touchdowns, that night, and was the big hero after the game. But I wanted to take you back, Dave, as I was looking back and counting up the years again. I don't know why, we have it published all over the website, but I went down a rabbit hole, and listen to this, Dave. In that game in 1991, that Grossmont won the last time they won, 1991, kids and adults that are watching right now, 1991, last time. Dave, imagine standing on the sidelines. This is personal between you and I. Everyone else can just tune out. You're going to love this. Imagine being a reporter at the game. Listen to who I was looking up stories. Listen to who was covering the game. This is who was the reporters at the game in 1991. Your dad, okay? He was there. Jim Lindgren, our good friend, the correspondent for us, and of course the East County writer of the San Diego Union Tribune. Kirk Kenny, great sports writer, my buddy, currently the beat writer, San Diego State, one of the best sports historians in this entire county writing some of the best content in the paper with his features about the history of sports in San Diego. Jim Trotter was covering the game, right? Probably the most elite pen and paper sports writer, right? Ink writer, if you will, the old school newspapers. Of course, he's all over TV now and everything. And yeah, and your dad, of course, was there. So imagine what kind of coverage that game got at that time. Now, Grossmont, of course, it was early in the season. It really wasn't. It was a championship game because everyone knew both teams were very, very good. And Grossmont had come into the game undefeated. So it was, it was a shocker because we talk about the 30 years right now. It was 13 games before that. Helix had won 13 in a row before Grossmont came up with that victory. So you figure 13 wins in a row by Helix, the one victory in 1991, and then now all the Helix victories for all these years. So that's not too, that's something to shoot for if you're a foothiller, and you don't need anything extra when you're going into this game. Because like I said, Dave, the Grossmont has played themselves into the position, and the winner of this game will have 2 victories and assure themselves at least a share of the Grossmont Hills League title. So I think that's awesome.
Now, what do you think? Do you think that's what they're completely focused on, or deep in the back of their minds, are they just as focused on that coveted musket and having it back at Grossmont? I mean, I'm almost thinking it's been there so long, they're going to have to pry that thing out of there because it's been there so long. I mean, that's got to be just as big as a league title, to be honest.
Well, I think anytime, yeah. Look, Grossmont Foothillers, you win this game, it's history, right? I mean, granted, you'll already win a share of the title as well, and Grossmont never gets that either because of Helix's dominance.
It's a win-win.
Even forget about 3 and 5. Forget about the 5 losses. You just you rewrote your whole career, and you'll be. Not that any of our players, any of the years that we just forget about teams or whatever, but you know what? You're going to be known. And some of those Grossmont teams, hey, who were they? I don't know, but you remember that team in 2021 that went out there and stunned Helix. So that being said, Dave, I've got Helix as a sizable favorite, and so do the computers. I mean, you look at the different rankings out there, and you could see that the Helix by some as much as a 3 or 4 touchdown favorite. And I have them winning as well by about 3 touchdowns.
No, sir. And I forgot to mention one of those defenders that I think are going to be key in keeping Jesse in check. And that's Mr. Espino. He also had quite a few tackles and was really giving Sanders and company a hard time. I'm telling you, I think that defensive line and even the secondary, I think they don't get enough credit as far as the Hillers are concerned, especially defensively. I think that is why the 3 touchdowns, I'm going to say no to the computers. I'm going to say no to the rankings period, because I think that when they hit that ball field and everything that's at stake, if they play as hard as they did against a good Granite Hills team, I want to mention that was not a bad Granite Hills team that took the field against. I mean, they even have a outstanding defense, and their offense hadn't been. Or they won 2 in a row. So this is all I got to say is 3 touchdowns. That's a little much. I'm going to go out, and I'm not even going to call it a limb because that thing's about broken on me anyhow. But I'm going to go ahead and this upset's is going to come true, and I'm going to take.
I'll give you bonus points if you get this one, Dave. I'll give you like 5 points, and you're still not going to be caught up.
I'm going to take Grossmont by a field goal.
Okay, great, Dave. I'll just remind you back in the spring. I almost called it like the COVID game. That would be a dumb thing to say, but the final score, I think it was 49-35. It was actually like a wild game. So the Hillers.
Was that 19 that had all the lightning and the crazy?
Yeah, no, the COVID doesn't, because the lightning doesn't come in April.
No, You remember that one though? That was
Yeah,
another.
no, Helix definitely played Grossmont on one of the lightning nights, on the big lightning night that canceled all the games,
Yeah,
except the Braves in Mount Miguel because they were hiding behind the mountain.
that was a fun game.
Okay. Well, and also, Dave, just so I'm not belittling the point. Grossmont going all the way back to 2001. They did win a league title back in 2005. They, I think they shared the championship with El Capitan in the Grossmont North League that year. So this century, obviously, it's been all Helix, 16-0, and what can you say? So over those 30 years, Dave, it's only been 25 games. There were a few years in there they did not play. So it's been 25 straight victories for the Highlanders. And Dave Dickens, son of the legendary sports writer that never got a game wrong, picks Grossmont to beat my Highlanders. But good luck to Grossmont, actually. And, Dave, when and if Grossmont does beat Helix, whether it's this Friday night or whatever night it will be, I will celebrate with them. And I will totally be thrilled beyond belief when they win that game. I really will.
Are we good on a split and a large pepperoni from Round Table?
Gosh, just send it on over right now. I can taste it already. We'll meet at the. Is that one by Grossmont? I don't think that one's even open anymore.
The Severn one, I'm not sure. I haven't been over there in a while. But
we'll be there. La Mesa Springs. They still have one over there. Okay, Dave, let's continue on with the Grossmont Hills League. We'll continue to talk about Granite Hills, and they're going to meet Steel Canyon. Both these teams lost the games, obviously, in the Hills League last week. In the battle of the running backs, Dave, right? Washington and Givens. Givens had a pretty nice game, 166 yards of total offense and a couple of touchdowns, and really had Steel Canyon in that game all the way. Steel Canyon did a great job. Want to shout out Jacob Manzo, the quarterback, right? We know that Steel Canyon's gone through a couple of quarterbacks, and I think Barton, we could see him, but Manzo looks like the man right now, at least for me, for Steel Canyon, give him the best chance to win this football game. We don't have as much contact this season with Steel Canyon, so we really don't know their plans or why there's been a little bit of jostling with the quarterbacks, but Manzo's been in there of late, and he's looked pretty good.
Well, I will tell you this. Working on the campus, you can definitely hear how long they've been on the field, too, and you can hear some of the talk even coming from the field. And I'll tell you what, this game right here does not go overlooked whatsoever. They are making this. I mean, from what I was hearing, it almost sounds like it's a championship game, and how dare they lose on their turf against this Granite Hills team. So, with that being said, I think that the Cougars are going to come out with 150%. And I remember even a quote from Coach Cobbs. This was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago that we briefly talked about this game and how the Steel Canyon games, and you and I have talked about it too, year after year, that kids.
It's your favorite matchup, really. You always say, since I've been on the scene the last couple of years, I mean, you've been covering games, under your dad's leadership for, over almost 20 years, but this has been your favorite for sure.
In the last 4.5 years, I would say yes. This one, kids, adults. I mean, if there's one that you want to go out, take the kids to for sure, that is not going to be a one-sided game. This game's always, there's a phenomenal catch, there's a close score, and it always comes down to the wire.
This one looks like it will too.
Well, I didn't get to finish my quote, and this from Cobbs was, you know what? If they end up 1-7, it's going to be the best 1-7 team in the county that we will be facing. And he spoke very highly of that team, as if it's not a team that he's underestimating at all, and that the record does not matter to him whatsoever.
And you agree with that, right, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, that kind of rivalry, and that's why it is a rivalry, is throw out the records. Those don't matter. Those two go at it. They go at it, and they go out there with 150% on both sides.
Okay.
So
Well, I didn't know if you were, because of the fact that, in essence, Helix needed to squeak by Steel Canyon in a game I thought they'd win by a little bit bigger margin. I really thought they would. And Steel Canyon exceeded my expectations in the game and did a great job. So I didn't know if you were penalizing Helix at all by going against Grossmont, because I don't want to say struggled against Steel Canyon. Like I said, I mean, that was a hard-nosed ball game between two clubs that always play football games like that. But these two teams do too. You mentioned all the close games, right? And how it is. Look, the Granite Hills wins. The last 10 meetings they've split. Listen to when Granite Hills wins. They won by 7, 3, 2, 1, and 3. And you see it that close, right?
Yes, and that's what I was going to get at. Is I think what's been carrying Steel Canyon and keeping him in those games, obviously, is I think that defense is pretty ferocious. I don't want to take away from Major Gibbons. Don't get me wrong. I think that he is a very key component to that offense. I don't know as much, like you mentioned, about the juggling of the quarterbacks or what the exact situation.
They are better. Manzo is an added. It's from what we saw. Even though Barton looks like a developing player, Manzo right now he does bring a little bit more than what the other two quarterbacks, to me, it looks like. So I bumped them up a little bit as they've been even in last week's game. I think his play was key.
Which brings me to Granite Hills, the juggling of the quarterback situation over there too. I wasn't successful in getting a hold of Coach Cobbs tonight. Usually do, but he might have had a longer night of practice, what have you. He's a busy guy. But at any rate, after last week, would I say that he's going to put Sanders on the bench? Absolutely not. Not on one game. Yeah. However, I would not be surprised if there is a possibly throwing Nico out there just for a different look, different feel, maybe to start the game, or maybe even flip-flop that. Maybe Sanders starts a game and we see how it goes, and then we'll see a little bit of Nico. So, you know what? Exactly, PJ. I just think that it's going to be a juggling of the quarterbacks. Definitely, you're going to see two of them. I think if Granite is to compete with this Steel Canyon defense, because I think that's what's going to be the big key. And I'll tell you what, let's not forget, Granite Hills' defense against Grossmont was not horrendous. Yeah, they gave up 24 points, but how many points did they score in the first half? They held them to a goose egg. So the only problem there, we know, and any football fan knows, they were on the field too long. They were gassed.
Well,
you can't have your offense going 3 and out or not even 3 and out, turning the ball over, and then your defense has already just got to the sidelines, had a drink of water, and they're already heading out for another set of downs. I mean, that's putting a lot on that defense, which is indeed a very good defense. And as I mentioned, Burton as just one of them. Tanner, you also want to throw in there, and there was even it was Joaquin Thomas Jr. It wasn't so much. I mean, he did score a touchdown, and it was a beautiful touchdown, and he let me know that he scored that touchdown as he pointed out.
Oh, that was awesome! Yeah,
and I love that because he does do that. But there was another play, and I know you saw it. It was in the highlight reel that we had that he saved a touchdown, and he really got some airtime. And I think he's just as good of a DB for sure. And I think that's going to be key in this game also, is breaking up some of those big plays, especially in the red zone. He did a phenomenal job, and punting too. So I think the special teams could come up big too. But this game, as we saw PJ mention it too, this one's going to strap yourself in, okay? Make sure you don't go get stuck at halftime and be at the end of the line, and then you don't get to see the kickoff for the beginning of the second half because you might just miss something. Yeah. Something big might happen.
I mentioned those last 10 games that they've split 5-5 that have been so close, especially when the Eagles win. But Steel Canyon leads the all-time series 12-6. So that means Steel Canyon back in the day won 7 of the first 8 meetings between the two. But Dave, of course, just harken back for you. It was 2017, those 2 games late in the season, the 43-41, the 28-27 in the semifinals, really some of the no doubt when we're too old to do this, we'll probably talk about those.
And I just wanted to add to that. How about in 2 of those? I believe so. There was a Burton involved, and the one that I'm talking about was the late. But anyway, I had never seen such a phenomenal play into the end zone. The way he went in. I mean, if you weren't at that game, the way he went in there and he was covered up, and I didn't know if he was going to catch that thing or not or hold on to that. But boy, what a play! What a way to win that game! It was just something that's burned into your brain. It's one of those plays burned into your brain forever, and just great history.
Yeah,
with this one, and when it's all said and done, this is always a tough one. Every time these 2 teams meet, but I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna stick with my Eagles as a bounce back, but I'm gonna say, even though they're playing at Steel, I'm going to say that Granite wins this one by 2.
Yeah, Dave, I'm going to go the other way. We're going to pick against here. I'm going to take Steel Canyon, and I've got Steel Canyon winning this one by a field goal by Martinez. He might kick a couple in this game. I don't know, but I mentioned those games. How good were those games, Dave? Remember, Steel Canyon went on to win that state championship that year, so that was a pretty good team. And just mention I just want to mention the Birds. We haven't mentioned. I don't think we've mentioned this on the show, and I know a lot of people know it out there. But you think of the great history of the Burton family, and how about Jake Burton of the New York Giants making the squad and looking great as an NFL rookie. So glad to see that. That's awesome. So we're going against each other in this one too, and both teams need it, Dave. Both teams need the win. And Logan's dad's out there is one of our biggest fans, and we're big fans of him too. So I purposely made Logan the thumbnail for our show this week. Let the Cougars know that we're thinking about them. And again, you're right, Dave. I mean, this game, unlike the last game where you are going out on a limb picking the Hillers, this game I'll give you lots of credit. It could go either way. It's going to be exciting between those 2 buddies of coaches as well. So like to hang out with those guys after the game. We could do a live show, but we might get kicked off the air from
we'll meet them at Pete's.
Yeah, the location. We might not be able to do a high school football show from that. So, okay, Grossmont Hills League, put that to bed. Again, we talked about the trilogy, right? This week 2. There's only 3 weeks. 4 games down, 2 more to go after this. All right, let's move into a huge game, really. No disrespect. We're not slighting this one at all. In the Grossmont Valley League, this is for the city championship, for the mayor's trophy, the West Hills Wolfpack, Dave, and their 10-game winning streak. They're number 16 in the media poll this week with their undefeated record. This is a championship deciding game between the Wolfpack and the Sultans. The Sultans, just like last year, Dave, in the final game of the season when West Hills won 20-7, Santana's coming in a little bit limpy, a little bit wounded, and that's making West Hills kind of a big favorite. The the polls don't necessarily say, well, yeah, they do. The computers say it as well. West Hill's a considerable favorite, unfortunately. The whole crazy thing about this is, Dave, in the CIF power rankings, Santana's ahead of both El Capitan and West Hills at this point.
Well, those computers, I'm gonna have to send a virus into those because they're
Well, this is the
definitely.
CIF one. That's like you could do this one by hand if you wanted to, but again, the computers have it the other way around.
Yeah, because I
didn't even mean to interrupt. I'm just the CIF, the official Division 3. Here's the saving grace, Dave, and I'll let you talk about this game. I mean to interrupt you and make you bag on the computers again. But all three teams looks like they can all get home games, even if the status quo happens in the final three results of the season. Probably because of where they're situated right now.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of why they're not giving love to any of them. The only thing I can think of is strength of schedule. I mean, that's the only.
Oh yeah, no, that's all. Pretty much
that's the
all
only.
it
But I don't think that it should bring it down. So I know they're not going to agree with me, and they don't probably care or give two hoots about what. But I think they're wrong, and that's it.
Well,
That's what I'm going to say about that. I think these three East County teams need a little more love, especially the one that is undefeated. And whether or not they beat a bunch of D1 schools is irrelevant. They are doing the best in their league and in their division. I think that they're doing quite well too. So I think they should be ranked a lot higher than they are. Same thing I will say for El Capitan. Santana, yeah, I could go either way. No offense to them, but there's been some games too. The El Capitan one in particular that I think would have knocked them down quite a bit because, and unfortunately, that's where they lost a lot of their key players too, which I'm going to get into. So Ethan Wright's going to get the start again behind center. Obviously, Nick is pretty much done for the season.
Oh, really? I couldn't even make it back for the end. If a playoff
with the broken, from what I heard last, as of late, with the broken hand, I don't think. I don't think that's happening. So.
Okay.
With Ethan, though, they said I know that Coach Estes mentioned that they were going to add some plays to the playbook. He's getting a little more familiar. It wasn't so complicated the first time around because he hadn't started any of those games and got to knock the rust off. So I'm sure that there's going to be an enhanced playbook, and I'm sure Ethan is quite capable because let's not forget too, Ethan Wright's a phenomenal baseball player. That's what I see behind center is I see just an athlete. Not so much a quarterback, but a great athlete that they have on the field. Just a great kid to talk with him before a couple of times. Just great kid. Now I want to apologize to Coach Casey Ash's I asked him a few questions about the game and they came in a little late. Unfortunately, since I'm using my phone for the camera, I couldn't get to it in time. So
well, we'll wait. We'll wait. Go ahead, I'm just kidding.
my apologies to Coach Ash on that. But Coach Estes, what he had to say, West Hills is very good, and over the years have had their number. We need to play great defense, and our offense needs to most definitely keep their offense off the field. Ball and clock management, period. And I think he hit the nail on the head. That is basically the only way that Santana could come away with that win. I think it also depends. They do have two good runners in Brashears and Nash.
Nash is back, right? I mean, he played in that Monte Vista game. He looked pretty good. He scored touchdown. He also scored a defensive touchdown in that game.
Correct. So
against the Monarchs.
I'm thinking between the two of them, taking switching reps and keeping each other fresh. That's a step in the right direction. And really, the Santana defense is what's kept them in every game the whole season. I mean, there's been a couple of games where they've had multiple turnovers, and you thought, how the heck did they even make it through that game? So I got my hats off to the defense. For I think off the top of my head, was it Logan? Definitely was one of them, and I just that whole front line is pretty good. However, they're also going up against some pretty talented offense. And that goes from the offensive line to Diego, the sophomore, has just been, oh my goodness. I've seen him live a couple of times, and I'll tell you what, he's like a bulldozer. Once he gets the ball, it's going to be a stiff arm, it's going to be a juke, or he's just going to straight out run you. And here's the other thing that I've noticed about that young kid is he doesn't drop the ball. Great ball security, great running skills, great sight, and then reading his blocks. I think he's going to be the key to a couple more years of the Wolfpack being on top. I think he's going to be something they can build around as well. Let me not take away anything, though, from Braden Oberg, because I think that he also is going to be a key in this game. Boy, I'll tell you what, he's had some balls that he's just launched, and he's just right on the money. As they say these days, he's throwing darts or he's throwing dimes. That's definitely what he has been doing. And let's look at it. And the key is he's not turning the ball over.
And right. He may not, no interceptions yet. Still no interceptions. And Santana's got a guy, Dylan Anderson, pretty good at intercepting.
And here's the thing. I believe that's the reason why is they're not setting him up for failure either. They're not making him throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. If you look at how many times he's throwing, what is it, about 15 times maybe a game?
Oh, if that. Not if you combine him, and you always rave about, when Dill comes into the game, but I mean, it's almost combined, and they're so efficient, both of them, and they really very, very high rating, high passer efficiency. But again, you talk about the weaknesses of West Hills. It's their strength of schedule and who they've matched up against, but they've gone through some good opponents too. That's why they are where they are. When I list them here as number 16, I'm just drawing out the media poll to the also receiving votes. And they were not in the poll last week, while El Capitan did receive a vote. This week, it's almost like West Hills, you mentioned undefeateds and you got to throw out the strength of schedule. Well, I think that's what a couple voters did. They said, wow, this West Hills team is 8-0. So we're going to throw them in 10th or 9th or something. And they drew some extra votes this week and actually leapfrogged El Capitan. So the media poll sees West Hills as the best team in the Grossmont Valley League. The computers see West Hills as the best team in the Grossmont Valley League. It's only the CIF rankings that don't have West Hills as the best team. Dave, here's the thing. The Sultans can slow it down, and they proved that, right? When they went limping into the game last year, the final score was 20-7. So now, granted, this West Hills team is really looking great. That West Hills team started 0-3 before they beat the Braves, and then they beat Santana on that final night of the season. So they have... But the guys who beat last year, Dave, the game in the spring, Oberg had he passed to Conway for a touchdown. Benavente, who had an interception last week. What is it with these Benaventes? There's one at Grossmont, and are these guys related? The Grossmont and the West Hills?
You know what? I've been actually
they're both.
I've been meaning to actually ask somebody that.
Put it in the chat. Somebody's watching. Put it in the chat.
But anyhow. I think the other thing is why West Hills should be ranked up there. The teams that they are playing that were maybe considered a weaker opponent, I think they should also get credit for blowing them out.
They don't do that in these rankings. They just count wins and losses, while the computer rankings do use. Everybody says, well, what's going to stop a team from rolling up a 75-0 victory? Well, the computer ranking, we don't know the formula. We know generally because we've heard the man that's devised the formula. You kind of get credit up to like 35-point victory over the projected score. So say you're expected to win by 2 touchdowns. They'll give you credit for up to winning by 6 or 7 touchdowns. But after that, all bets are off. They don't care if you win by 50 points or 80 points. You kind of win by 50, right? Running clock, games don't really get to that ridiculous score anyways anymore when you have those type of games. So also, you see Dylan's mom there. He scored a touchdown in that game in the spring. So you have all those experienced West Hills players from that game: Oberg, Conaway, Benavente, Mbimbo, right? All those guys. You do have some guys from Santana that were on that team. Important players too, like Logan Jordan, Logan Ellis. So some other important players too that I think, Santana can come in and try to manage that clock and keep it like that and stay within the game. Although maybe West Hills, the computers do say, Dave, looks like 3 touchdowns. I'm gonna call it 2 touchdowns.
Well, let's not forget about another key component if it comes down to that. I'm not saying it will. West Hills has in the Valley in particular, they're the one with the best kicker, or I should say, even in the Gross Mountain Conference, they have the best kicker that can hit those long field goals, as we already saw the 43-yarder.
I think we're seeing East County's doing a pretty good job at kicking. I've got Martinez, I think, is the best.
He's kicked it further than the 43.
Well, I just for leg strength, accuracy. To me, Martinez looks like. Garcia did a good job also for Grow. He had a big one, and Horvath of Helix, he kicked 2 in 1 period, so it's been a good year. But
I'm just saying, if it came down to it, and of the 2 teams, especially this one here, I think they got them on the special teams too. They've done a heck of a job there too. So, I think a well-oiled machine, well coached. And I think it's just as Coach Ash says after each game, for them to stay focused so long, so far, and just looking at the task at hand, and not losing that focus. As I mentioned to you earlier about what Coach Berner said. At this time of year, sometimes you could lose focus. That's how you lose a game.
Oh.
And the mentality I see on the sidelines, the games that I have actually been at physically for West Hills, you can see it too. They're not only cheering each other on, they are focused on the prize. And the prize not only is to go undefeated, it's to go undefeated, win the league, and win 2 trophies.
Win 2 trophies,
and
right?
It's starting with the Mayor's Cup.
Right. And that's, look, I kind of hinted at or teased at it about what Coach Ash said about the previous 2 opponents and not wanting to look ahead. He said all the right things to the media. The media is you, by the way. But he, very sporting and did a nice job in those games, beating those teams handily, but doing it with class and respect. And look, the other teams, look at the teams. They scored on West Hills. West Hills, I'm not saying that you can go out and pitch a shutout, but West Hills getting everybody involved. Other teams playing hard all the way. They got a shorter roster. They played through the 4th quarter. Those other teams scored, and West Hills still won the game. So this one's different, though, because of the city rivalry and the fact that don't feel bad for Santana, right? They're still 6-1. They're going to the playoffs. They might be hosting a home game as well, just no matter what happens in this game. And look, they're underdogs, and they're more. it would be better if we could see a Santana's team at full strength, especially with Nick Ledger. I'll just say it. Ethan's done a great job. Look, the team ran for like 160 yards in that Monta Vista game with Wright running the ball. He also threw it. I will say he only threw it. He threw it to a couple guys, but only Dylan Anderson caught it. So if they want to throw, they probably got to open up a little bit because West Hills is great secondary. We know that. So there's going to be a little more versatility there. But Santana's 6-1, Dave. There's no way that there's a look ahead here, even though we know that the El Capitan game, which is supposed to decide the league championship, is on deck. There's no way West Hills wants to flub up. And I'm not discounting Santana. This is a championship game for them. They need this game if they want to have a chance to share the championship. The first championship since 1999. Don't forget. I mean, we know what happened in the spring, but again, that didn't count necessarily as a championship, right?
That counted for us.
Yeah, but it did count for the Mayor's Trophy, which currently sits in the hands of the West Hills Wolfpack, as it has for 8 of the last 9 meetings. And in the 21st century, West Hills has won 16 of those 20 games. So Santana won 4 out of the first 5 times. And I don't know. I think they did start with a trophy. They might have started with a trophy right away in this series. But after Santana won 4 of the first 5, it's West Hills 22-5 ever since. So Mike's got Tyler Haley winning this one with a field goal. And Dave, you're going West Hills?
I'm going West Hills. I think it's just going to be a battle because it really has been most of the times that they have met. And because it is a crosstown rivalry. And I'm going to have to say this one here, though. I'm going to take West Hills by 10.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll agree with you. I'll go with 2 touchdowns. Like I said, the computers it's definitely 3 touchdowns in the computers. So
I'm going to give Santana a little bit more.
I am too, and that's with the injuries. Like I said, the algorithm doesn't know about the injuries. To me, it looks like it does here in a way. And like I said, strength of schedule, at least, and it's a little bit different in each division. I'm not saying anything about the CIF power rankings, whether they're good, bad, right, or wrong, but it looks like to me, at least in Division 3 or the teams that they're playing, it does have a strength of schedule has a pretty big influence, because otherwise, how could Santana, West Hills, El Capitan, they all have very similar records. I think we could agree there. And yet Santana, despite the 5 touchdown loss or whatever it was to El Capitan, leads both these teams. Santana right now, just to make it clear, in case I know a lot of people are looking at it, but not everybody is. So Santana's in 5th in Division 3. El Capitan is in 6th, and West Hills is in 8th, behind Brawl.
See, that's where I'm sure even Coach Berner and Coach Ash shake their head. I'm shaking it with them.
I don't know. Did they all apparently everybody voted for this. So they all wanted it because they all want to know, what they have to do to go up. And again, they can say all they want about have to go up. And of course you want to win the league title. It looks to me like all 3 teams looks like they're headed to a first round. It looks like they're all going to finish somewhere 5, 6, 7, or 8 to me, and they'll all have first round home games. None of them will get a bye, and maybe they'll win those first round home games and be able to continue on. So, okay, Dave, good job on that game. Hey, I've got a real interesting game for you, and I think that the outcome could be a toss-up in a way. But Mount Miguel's playing a little bit better than Valhalla. They're ranked a little bit higher and stronger than Valhalla, and why not? They have the man at quarterback, Ruben Hernandez. Dave, 4 touchdowns last week for Hernandez. Mount Miguel did a nice job in gaining a victory. Boy, they've really been the undertold story, and right now with their 3-3 record, just a nice job. I hope they qualify for the playoffs. I'm not sure how it's going to work. I think they said you got to have 9 games. They're going to
9.
end up with 8 games, but I think that this year that
I-
maybe those things will be waived. And if you look at the teams that are behind Mount Miguel, they deserve to be in the playoffs. And good news for Valhalla. I mean, I don't see any way they're not going to make the playoffs. I mean, they're in 7th place. Even if they lose the next 2 games and they're playing Mount Miguel, who they could beat, they're underdogs, and they're playing Monte Vista, who they could beat them too. That's going to be kind of a great game to see where those teams are, Valhalla and Monte Vista. You want to see where you're at? Monte Vista is going to be getting for that first win next week. Valhalla can get it. Valhalla's going to the playoffs. Monte Vista isn't. That's going to be a fierce battle. But what I'm saying here, Dave, is Valhalla's going to the playoffs pretty sure, even if things don't go their way. And Mount Miguel, I hope they're in. I think they should be.
The only thing I would question on the Mount McGill is one of those games was COVID related, but the other one was due to staffing. So I don't know if they're going to waive that one as well.
Well, go ahead.
But that would still keep them in the 9 games. So I'm thinking they'll waive one, but I don't think they're going to waive both of them.
Right.
You can't get your administrations to put together enough staff. That's kind of on both your programs.
They were trying to fill a bye week though too, in a way. I mean, they were trying to get that 9th game. They were trying to fill the bye week. Remember, they were going to pick up the game on the bye. And I know what you're saying, that they didn't have the staff. They had scheduled the game.
But is CIF going to recognize that they couldn't do that because of a time constraint? Which doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because they'll still fall under the 9 games that CIF is required.
Right, and I've already given up. I mean, I'm not going to make fun of the Grossmont. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody. There's just no way you're going to make up the Mount Miguel Santana game. There's 2 weeks left. If people want to recognize the game as postponed, I'm canceling the game. I'm nobody.
Here's what it is. It's canceled. They'll play one next year, but it'll be a new one. I'll say it was canceled. It's not. That's it. Let's move on and let's look at what's going on with the future for these 2 clubs.
There's a future. Yeah, we're going to the playoffs, and this is a good game.
So that's nonsense now. So the thing I was going to say is you're saying about Ruben, but Jeremiah gets back there behind center once in a while too, and also has been chucking the ball. So he's my versatile guy. He can play receiver. He can play quarterback. He's also great on a baseball diamond, but that's a whole different story. But I think this kid is also key to Ruben Martinez being successful. And as you saw, that's been a little difficulty because I've been trying to get Ruben's his thoughts. I think there's a communication. I don't know if he doesn't have a cell phone or something. I don't know what the real deal is, but I have Jeremiah Castillo though. He's my inside man that you've seen is kind of gets us some of the inside details.
Well, he was groomed by his brother to be media friendly, but he's terrific. He's a terrific quote. He knows exactly what's going on, and his insights are right on every time. And boy, the Matadors, another running back stepped up last week, sophomore Eric White. So we've already seen, several guys that can get a move on with the Matadors. They are a very, very tough team to stop.
Well, I think, again, many would say, Troy Starr is Coach Starr's basically figured out how to utilize the tools that he has. JD is gone and that was his man. But now I think he has more tools this year than he had in years past, to be quite honest. And I don't think he realized that he had the tools that he had till maybe 2 or 3 games into the season. So I might have underestimated them myself. But Valhalla also, when they beat I mean, what they did to the Braves, that absolutely threw me for a loop, as I didn't think they were that tough. They scraped by to beat Hilltop, and then annihilated the Braves. Um, but then, the Braves had just beaten Monte Vista on their own. So it's kind of between those couple of teams, the Braves, the Norsemen, and Monte Vista. I mean, obviously Monte Vista this season, unfortunately, it's kind of been. I don't want to say it's been a bust. They played some tough teams, and they haven't had the amount of kids, first of all, but they also don't have the big back. The offensive line has played well. Aiden Roby has been their leading running back. He still gets plenty of yardage each game, and Coach Estes spoke pretty highly of them, and pretty much anybody in the Valley gives lots of props to Coach Hamamoto and the job that he does do with what he has. Unfortunately, I don't think he has enough talent around those kids. I even think, Richardson would be better with probably a couple more people to throw to. He's gotten pretty beat up back there this season, but I got to say he's a pretty sharp kid, and I think he's going to do big things elsewhere. If not in football, I think academically. But I admired what he did a couple of weeks ago too. In what we've talked about briefly, just owning stuff when you don't do the exact right thing at that time. But anyway, that's also due to, I think, Coach Hamamoto demands quite a bit of his players, and I think that's a good thing. So on this one here, I'm going to say, I don't know which Norseman team's going to come out. I mean, I know Bussey's done everything he could possibly think of and used everything in his playbook. I think that they're still going to be in a rebuilding and evaluating process this year for the remainder, which, like you said, they're still going to get into the playoffs. What they do from there, depending on their matchup, is up in the air. But even though it is at Valhalla, this one is a pretty tough one. But I'm going to say that Mount McGill is on a roll, and that Mount McGill continues to roll, and with Ruben Martinez and Mr. Castillo and Eric White coming into town, I think that they're going to take care of the Norsemen on their home field on Orange Nation TV, and they are going to win by 10.
Yeah, with Valhalla in that game, in their game last week, tough loss certainly, but you know what? Tommy Logan, AJ Cornthwaite, they connected again for a touchdown, and I think I should have come with the stat. I didn't get quite far enough on that game that I wanted to, but they are one of the top quarterback wide receiver touchdown duos in the East County. Despite the way things have gone, that some quarterbacks have kind of multiple receivers, and there are a few spectacular ones who have multiple touchdowns this season, but these two are among the leaders in touchdown connections this season. So, but you're right, Dave. Hernandez over 900 yards of total offense. He's scored 13 touchdowns. He's scored multiple touchdowns in 4 games this season, and that was a good game against the Braves. For the Matadors, this is their biggest game of the season, Dave, because of what I said, trying to make sure they should they qualify for the playoffs, they're probably going to need this this victory. They're currently in 11th place in the Division 4 power rankings. And Valhalla, here's the thing, Dave. Mount McGill is expected to win, and you picked them, and I'm picking them too. They're favored by the computers by, maybe more than 2 touchdowns. If you throw in a little bit of home field, maybe it's 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say Mount McGill wins this one. I'll say by 1 touchdown. They should win by more. Just want to give a little bit of respect to Valhalla. I think they can come out and play hard. And hey, maybe they could steal this game. This would be a great, great victory to hang your hat on this season.
That's why I say 10 is
okay, 10.
Give a little home field advantage.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you then. But just because, just to make it clear though, look at this, Dave. So Mount McGill, they're expected to win. Most people think they're going to win. The computers say they're going to win. But if you look at the CIF power rankings, it's Valhalla that's in 7th place. That looks like they're assured of a playoff berth, while Mount McGill, they need to win this game and be admitted to the playoffs. But let's throw that out the window. I'm just saying wherever. Let's just say that's where they are. Mount McGill's in 11th. They're barely in the playoffs right now, even though they have the better record than Valhalla. Again, the strength of schedule is what matters, and we know Valhalla's played some pretty good teams. Mount McGill, we definitely can agree they haven't played as tough a schedule. So the last 14 meetings, this series is tied 8-8 in the 21st century. It's 11-9 Valhalla. Wow. Just want to add, and we already congratulated these teams, coming out of when Valhalla got shipped back, to the Valley League. But this is the oldest continuous series in the East County. They talked a lot about last week with that Chula Vista game against Sweetwater being, a lot of people said, no, that's not the oldest matchup. Well, what they were saying was it's the oldest continuous series, meaning they've met in consecutive years, and that's what Sweetwater, right? A lot of people got that confused and said, well, look at some of those teams that date back to the playing, back in the 20s and 30s. But for the East County, this is it right here. They've been playing since Valhalla came in as a school in 1975. So awesome for that. This will be a good game out there, and definitely giving Valhalla a chance. Mount McGill's the favorite. All right, Dave, you talked a lot about Monte Vista, so I don't know if we have to hash too much about them because you talked them up. You talked them up pretty good. They're going to be big underdogs against El Capitan. Of course, Ron Berner is going to tell you never to look past a Ron Hamamoto coach team. And for El Capitan, just stay healthy. Here's the thing that might make it a reasonable game or give Monte Vista a chance to maybe get on the board a couple times. El Capitan probably pretty deep roster. They're going to be comfortable in this game. You don't want to get anybody hurt going into the game against West Hills.
Well, and like I said, I told you before, but not the audience. Coach Berner did say verbatim, Monte Vista is always well coached and always a tough one. Every game, because I had asked him, I said, is this a trap game? And he said to him, every game is a trap game from here on out. It's a true statement as kids can lose focus so easily this time of year. And then he also wanted to assure us nothing regarding no updates on Alex by coming back or anything really, any news on him at this point. But he did want to assure us that everyone else on the roster is healthy and they're just excited to get on the field and play some football. That was basically that's very Berner-esque as far as that goes. And I think, hey, who knows? I think that Monte Vista could put some points on the board. But I'll tell you what, that tandem of
I was seeing how long. I was going to time it. How long could we go before we talk about the Yoakley brothers?
Oh my goodness! And it doesn't matter if it's Antoine
I don't
going
want to
out
talk about them. I love them, but
Sabi going to Antoine or Newland coming in and throwing to Sabi and then watching Sabi be savvy. Just the way he runs on that field is just unbelievable. The way he can get out of a tackle, the way he runs, the way he can throw on the run, he can throw across his body. Just a true athlete. And I don't want to take anything away from his brother because Antoine has got a pair of soft hands too, and they rarely drop the ball either. I mean, they as a tandem. I don't have that stat in front of me, but I can tell you they haven't dropped very many balls. And I don't think even when Mr. Newland's been back behind center, I don't think Sabi's dropped much either. It's just between the three of them alone is fantastic. But let's not forget about the other key components that set that up, and people tend to forget. There's still X-Piece, Xavier Peace. He's also one of the bigger pieces to that offense. No pun intended, So I think that he's going to be also one of them. Maybe LaRussa Jr. might even, who knows, maybe because of what type of game this is, we might see some of those names on the field a little earlier than normal, and maybe Newland might also come in depending on the score. Because, as you mentioned, we don't want to get any of these starters injured before that big burner cup coming up the following week.
Especially those superstars. I mean, we'll just wrap it up a little bit for Savvy and Antoine. Of course, they combined for 5 touchdowns right before halftime. Savvy rushed for 3 scores and passed for 2 more to Antoine. They led 32-7 over Valhalla. We mentioned Valhalla's touchdown in that game. And actually, Valhalla scored early, threw a little bit of drama into the game early. Got one of the first three or four scores in there. But Dave, just want to mention the Vaqueros in their winning streak, right? Right now, they're just really undergoing some of their best play since that magical season in 2014 with their 5th straight win right now. So just a great job by El Capitan to get in this position. They're going to roll this week, but big game. Hey, Julian May last week, 2 sacks and a fumble recovery against Valhalla. Go ahead.
I just want to say, don't be surprised, and I bet you that's what the big surprise is and why we're not being given any news at this time. I think that Alex is going to be ready to go for that burner cup, and that's why he is keeping him on the shelf a little bit longer, because he's going to need him not only for that game but throughout the playoffs. And why not keep him on the shelf a little longer, give him some more healing time, because they're going to need everything that they've got from here on out.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Coach Berner maybe a little, starving for a little bit more publicity for his team. Again, I kind of joked about how West Hills leapfrogged El Capitan in the media poll, but again, I think people see that undefeated record, and they're not going to get much respect or coverage this week. I mean, we're going to talk about El Capitan, of course, and Monte Vista, but again, you're looking at a lopsided game. And Dave, they've won of those wins. You think of the 5th consecutive win right now for El Capitan, how hot they are. It's also the team's 5th. They've won them all by 34 points or more every victory. So they're playing good teams, decent teams, but they're rolling them. They're not the best teams in the world, but they're smashing them. And when you're expected to smash, people aren't going to take as big of note. The thing that's caught everybody's eye, though, of course, is Yoakley and his spectacular statistics. One of the polls, social media, the Twitter this week said, who do you have? Who's your top 5 players in the county? And it's hard to, some of the teams, the really good teams, have like a bulk of good players, right? Maybe not the overwhelming guy. And so a lot of those lists are finding both Christian Washington and Savvy Yoakley as 2 of the top 5 players in the county. But of course, there are some other great players you talk about. And of course, Savvy mentioned, he really would like for San Diego State to express some interest in him. And we saw today a top recruit pick San Diego State. So I'd like to see that. I just think that when you look at the top players in the county, Yoakley, I think he'll get plenty of looks. He might make it to the podium. If he doesn't, they might look at it because of the opponents that they played. And
Well,
again, El Capitan trails Santana and West Hills in those power rankings because of strength of schedule.
Well, I still think I think differently than a lot of the media outlets, and thus that's why we cover win or lose, and we always try to find whether it's a statistic or some spectacular play. There's always a spectacular highlight in every game, and I think that's probably in the tweet that I saw also from El Capitan regarding 2 weeks in a row not being recognized on a top media outlet, and which I'll mention. We'll mention all of you regardless of the outcome, because there are recognizable plays, recognizable statistics, regardless of a win or lose. So that's the way I look at it anyway, and I know that you back that one up somewhat as well.
Yeah, and even though, Dave, we want to get these guys off the sideline this week and get them rested for that game, it's still having Savvy's having such a historic season. Not that you could just score at will, but we'd like to. I think it would be nice to rack up a few more touchdowns. And when you give that guys like Yoakley and Christian Washington, it's kind of like playing touch football when you were their age, right? You just when you wanted to beat your friends, you just gave it to the best guy and let him score.
Well, I didn't want to take focus off the matchup for too long, but I did want to mention, because you mentioned San Diego State, I wanted to also mention for two reasons. Number one, after meeting a wonderful guy, I must say, too, for the first time, and that's Joaquin Thomas Jr.'s father on the sidelines, and knowing that San Diego State and also Fresno State have taken interest in Joaquin Thomas, and so I think that's a phenomenal, something that we like to hear, especially if he does decide to go local. That would be fantastic. But also featured on the Katera show, I believe it was 2 days ago, Mr. Jesse Matthews, former Christian player. He was on the show talking to Katera, and they were talking about how he hadn't had as many receptions as of recently, but he did score the 2 touchdowns. So
he had a walk-off. He hits a walk-off touchdown.
So that's where Coach Katera, like us, wanted to recognize, you know what, maybe he's not getting the receptions and he's not getting the big yards, but look, 2, not 1, but 2, and a walk-off. That's pretty big news, I think, as far as Aztec football is concerned and as far as East County sports former players are concerned.
Yeah, like Michael Shawcroft. I mean, he's just a...
Oh, that guy, he's just a whole new... Yeah. I mean, he's just a different beast.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a young player, too. So, okay, we'll talk about Christian just a moment. Let's talk this. I think this game, probably get... El Cap, I got him by... at least I'll say 4 touchdowns. Probably should win by 5 or more, but again, they could get some other guys in. Let's get everyone in there. And El Capitan, Dave, won the 5 of the last 7 this century. 5-2 this century.
I'm gonna give it to El Cap, but I'm gonna give a little bit to Monte Vista defensive wise, and because I think that the second string that will be in probably by the second half, not to take anything away from, because I've seen some great play out of the depth that the Vaqueros have too. But I'm going to say for sure at least El Cap by 3 touchdowns.
Okay, real good. And that's it in the Grossmont Valley League. We get ready for big games this week and next week. All right, Dave. Christian, well, they just ran into a juggernaut last week when they took on Scripps Ranch, who's just looking terrific right now. And Christian did pretty well. They actually ended up scoring in the game I think it was 41-27. They did a pretty good job, but Scripps Ranch, what can you say? They're just looking terrific as a top 10 team right now. So Christian's going to get a win this week. They're playing Canyon Hills. This is the first ever meeting between these two teams, right? Because Canyon Hills is a new team called the Rattlers, but these two teams have met before. But
They're conquistadors.
Yeah, hey, I don't think we could say conquistador, but these teams have met 5 times, and they've all been blowouts. Christian won the last meeting back in 2015. It's the only meeting this century actually, and Christian barely won that one, 56-0.
Well, Dan Mitchell, Coach Dan Mitchell, did have a little to say regarding. I mentioned about the next 2 games. I said, you got to win the next 2 games for sure, and I'm sure in hindsight he definitely knows that. But he had a little to say. We're not thinking about the wins. We are thinking about getting better. We are a young group, which is true, and a young group makes mistakes. Our focus is to start finding ways to eliminate these mistakes, and if we do that, then the winning will be the byproduct. I mean, that's well said, because they are a younger group, and yeah, they made a few mistakes, but I think even mistakes included, as you mentioned before, playing a top-notch Scripps Ranch team like that. And believe me, Coach Mitchell had fantastic things to say about the quarterback in particular over there at Scripps Ranch, and just the way, want to talk about throwing dimes or darts or however they put it these days. He said he's just a phenomenal quarterback, and the way he hits his receivers and just the team all the way around. That Scripps Ranch team is going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I think that they're definitely championship bound for sure. I mean, at their level, because they're just like he said, they really, for the most part, played flawless football, and that's what they have been doing most of the season as well. So, but I couldn't get him to commit for a blowout or anything like that. But with what Christian has, and being able to even stay within a few points of a team like Scripps Ranch, I think going into this one, where Canyon Hills played El Capitan, as a matter of fact, and El Capitan handily beat Canyon Hills. And with that being said, if you want to look at the numbers too, and if Christian were to face off against an El Capitan, I definitely think that Christian should have this one well in hand on both sides of the ball. I can't say enough about their defensive coordinator and how he has that defense. He's a step above. They have a college D coordinator running their defense, and as Coach Mitchell says every single time after the game, and I think it's an absolute truth, is one of the best athlete on the field is of course Joey Merritt. And you know what, it's in his name. I mean, the amount of merit that kid, and how humble he is, but just what he does on that football field, whether or not he's on special teams, on defense, on offense, that kid he can ball. That's just the bottom line. Let's not take anything away from Devla too. I mean, Jake's been.
They hooked up twice in the game, including a 71-yarder. I mean, they had some big plays against a very good team.
And those two, it's sometimes it's almost like they're playing in the backyard, or the way we used to play on even the middle of the street until cars came by. We'd set up on the street, and it's almost like they're just playing street football. And the other thing I want to say for this being Jake's first full season, he doesn't get rattled easy either. It's if you watch him in his play on the field, he definitely doesn't get rattled, and I think that's one of the keys to his success back there at the quarterback position. Not to mention, if he gets flushed out, that just makes him just as good with his legs. And I just think that he's definitely right up at the top of right next to Merritt. And there's just too many players to name. I mean, the offensive line's been playing fantastic, and I'll never forget JC because he's always putting his 2 cents in. And let's not forget about Mr. Province. And I think that he
There's
might
another
even get
good kicker, huh?
he could also get a chance to maybe put some through the uprights for a field goal or two. So and we've seen him kick some beauties too. So
Yeah.
not to mention
Yeah,
he
36-yarder in the game last week.
and he makes a few receptions too. Don't forget that Jake throws to him quite often too, and he's not too shabby himself on run after the catch. So there's
Province,
just,
I think he's being recruited by the Stanford as a player because he's so large, but he could kick too. And Stanford's had some great history of kickers, but I know he's a football player. He's a position player,
but I think it's really when Coach Mitchell says it is. I think it is a team effort. It really is. The way that this team gels and they realize, and they are, even the superstars are so humble that I think that is the reason that they are a tight group, why they do stay in those tough games, and why they do win some of those tough games. And I think realistically they should win this one, and they should win the next one. And I think they should definitely finish 7-3 for sure, and should finish pretty decent in the Eastern League as well.
well, here's the thing, right? So the Christian players, I mean, they know that they want to win these last 2 games. The league championship is going to be out of reach because Scripps Ranch is so good. They're going to play Mira Mesa. That's the big game, and they'll win that game. So, but you want to finish strong. You want to get a good seed in your playoffs. Christian's going to be looking pretty good for their playoff positioning. But again, the players may not really differentiate too much. I think they know, of course, that Canyon Hills is not as good as their next opponent, but I'm just worried that Coach Mitchell's already spent this entire week planning ahead for Point Loma, because going against his best friend, his best buddy, he might be having these guys do plays this week working on Point Loma. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek, and I might be serious and I might not be.
And you know what? If I were to get Coach Mitchell on the line right now, and if he is watching right now,
he would deny it, but I'm not sure it's true.
That's what I'm saying. He's probably shaking his head right now. No, you are incorrect.
Okay.
I am planning for Canyon Hills, and it's one game at a time, and we're going to not scoreboard watch. We're going to just go out there, take care of business. And I know I'm pretty close on that, right, Coach? Anyhow,
okay. I'm also make it up that he's spent more hours watching Point Loma film this week than Canyon Hills, and I'm just completely making that up, but it makes for a good story.
So in this one, I'll take Christian for sure. Just after seeing what our Grossmont Conference team did to Canyon Hills, and Christian, I think, being just a step above, I'm going to say Christian by 3 touchdowns easily.
Okay, I got it written down here somewhere. I've got Christian. I've got Christian by maybe 5 touchdowns. I think Christian wants to. I think they want to show some things here, and they might have a chance.
Jake.
They haven't. Ready. Right, they haven't really. They played some tough games, and but and they're classy, but they might put a number up this week.
Rock and fire, right?
Yep. Now these next two games are very, very important in the Division 5 playoff situation as we get ready for that. But first and foremost is the rivalry game between Mountain Empire and Hopeville. Even though teams like Borrego and Julian might think of Mountain Empire as their rival, Mountain Empire considers Hopeville their rival, as we know. Dave, this is the second meeting of the season between these two teams. They're tied for third place in the Desert League right now, just a half game behind Vincent Memorial. Mountain Empire is going to be cutting it very, very close, trying to get into the playoffs. They're a pretty good football team that deserves to be in the playoffs. Dave, get this. All four of their victories have come by shutout this season, and the team record for shutouts in the one season is 5. They might not get there with these last two games. They're very, very tough. They're playing Hopeville. The first meeting was 22-14 at Mountain Empire. This game will probably be close as well. Palo Verde Valley is in first place. They're a little bit better. That game is going to be a little bit tougher. But first things first, you can win this game on the road because it's a rivalry. We did get some news that their quarterback might be back maybe in time for the playoffs, maybe that last game.
Maybe.
But what's the scoop right now? We know Mountain Empire, this is going to be a tough game and a good game.
Well, let's revisit it momentarily. I mean, they were up 14 to nothing at halftime when they were playing on their field.
Oh, boy.
And I don't know what happened after that. From what I was told, they just went out there and were out of gas already. So obviously playing all 4 quarters is going to be key. Talk briefly with Coach Bernard Van. As he mentioned, we have found an identity without being able to throw the ball. We like. Our defense is tough, and we certainly remember how we let the last meeting slip away against the H word. So we need to execute and avoid mistakes, make plays when they present themselves, and the rest will take care of itself. And that is exactly what I just think they need to play up 4 quarters. And I think with who they've gotten, and if they play anything like they did last week, and Mr. Clark is just doing his thing that he does week in and week out. I mean, he's just a man amongst boys. I think he reminds me of McClendon when he was with Monte Vista. I think he's a similar build, similar type player. If you look at the numbers, he's doing quite a fantastic job too on both sides of the ball and making a heck of a lot of tackles, and even with that bum arm. So, I mean, I think that they still have the talent, and you're right. If they could get Corey Van back for playoffs, I think that would be ideal.
What did they tell? Are they just holding out hope because first of all, the playoffs are no certainty. It's going to be close. I think even here's the thing, Mountain Empire, face it, Dave. I know you're going to pick them this week. They're still underdogs no matter how you look at it against Hopeville. Just look at, but they might need to win one of the 2 games to squeak in. They might make it if they don't win, but it's that close. I mean, if they don't make it, they're probably going to finish 12th. And here's the funny thing about it. The Braves are in 10th. Foothills Christian is in the Division 5. They're in 13th. Probably 2 of our 3 teams right there are going to make it. Foothills Christian, they're on the outside looking in, but they're playing a little bit better. Mountain Empire, look, I'm just saying it as what's expected, right? They're expected to lose the next 2, so they know they got to go out there and win. I'm sure that's what they're being, you're going to want to win every game, especially against Hopeville. You don't need any motivation, but maybe that'll propel them to get the victory. They win one of the 2, they're in.
And that's where I'm saying, as you mentioned, their last game, that one's going to be a little tougher, a taller order. So I think look, they almost beat them last week. They ran out of gas. I'm sure that they're practicing exactly that of uh, trying to have that stamina to get through all four of those games. And let's also add, the temperature change is probably also going to be in their favor. It's going to be more like football weather out there in the desert. So I think that's going to also be in favor of Mountain Empire as well. So they won't be running on fumes come second half. And I'm going to say let Larry do Larry, and and not only him. I mean, we've talked with Lasky. He's Landon Lasky has been a big part of
Yes.
their recent winning and the shutouts. So let's not forget about those. Mr. Rodriguez. It really would be nice if they had Mr. Van back.
Cody Whitehead's helped out that running game now too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he got, I think he scored 2 touchdowns in the
right.
game. In the win last week. Second shutout in a row, by the way. Dave, I just want a little bit of shout out to everybody for Mountain Empire if they made it through the show this long, or maybe they just skipped to it, all those people that watch. But it was the Red Hawk. This is only the 4th team to ever record at least 4 shutouts in one season. Talking about Mountain Empire football, which has been around for a long, long time, right? Since the late 20s, then the 20s, 1920s. The Red Hawks clubs of 2000 under Coach Jim Jones and 1975 under Coach Bill Prince. Those teams had 4 shutouts in a season, but it was the Mountain Empire team of 1971 that recorded 5 straight shutouts, including 4 straight to open the season as they went 8-1. That Red Hawk team under Henry Brigida allowed just 18 points in their first 8 games before falling in the championship game to Julian. I mentioned Julian. They were longtime rivals. 26-18. That team had a big-time defensive star by the name of Keith Richardson. Now, that's just my Mountain Empire history for the day. And my other history is in this series, Dave, which dates back to 1945. Hopeville leading 39-22-1. Just want to shout out anybody who could help me in the Mountain Empire area, or maybe Hopeville. We are looking for the result if the game was played in 1945. We don't have that. That was supposed to be the first meeting. Did they play? We understand they played. So help. Who won in 1945 between Hopeville and Mountain Empire? Dave, I've got Hopeville winning this one. I'm going to take Hopeville by a touchdown.
I'm going to say because they came so close yet so far away, and they let it slip away. I think it is revenge time, and I want to say they split last time, and I'm going to say this time the same is going to be, and I'm going to take Mountain Empire by a field goal in Hopeville, walk-off style, and now know this: the Mountain Empire and the Hopeville fans travel pretty well, so there'll be plenty of Mountain Empire Red Hawk fans there too. So how about a nice field goal, walk-off style, win by 3, and get to brag on the way out of Hopeville?
Yeah, and I think this game. I want to say that this. I hope this hasn't been moved to a neutral site game. I thought Hopeville was having to play their games somewhere else, so I apologize for that. Please look that up before you go. Anyway, whatever the case may be, Mountain Empire is not playing at home, but maybe Hopeville has been playing their games in El Centro. I'm not sure. I could be a little confused on that. It just came to my brain right now, and that's not real good. So anyways, just to wrap up, one more thing about that, Dave. Hopeville is the computers have Hopeville by probably 2 touchdowns in that one. So we're both you're picking Mountain Empire, but I'm also picking a closer game than the computers expect. It's a big game in Division 5 when Escondido Charter plays Foothills Christian. Now Escondido Charter looks like they're going to go on, and they're the best team. They're 6-1, 3-0 in the Pacific. Foothills Christian, you see, they are 2-1 in the Pacific. Foothills Christian lost a non-league game to San Ysidro last week, 14-3. The Cougars scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. Foothills Christian, they are the other factor in that Division 5 right now, on the outside looking in 13th place. But Foothills Christian does face Maranatha Christian on the road next week. The winner of that game could squeak into the postseason. We've already seen Maranatha lose to some of our teams, right? So Foothills Christian could win that game next week and get into the playoffs. This game is being played, I believe, at Sayout Field. I also saw one report that said it was at Escondido Charter, but I think this game is at home. The all-time series is tied 2-2. Last meeting in 2014, the Knights won that one, and they also in 2009, it was 69-41. That was the highest scoring game in Knights history of 11-man football. They've had higher scores in 8-man football, but 110 points in 2009. So, all right, Dave, good job. Unless you have anything else you want to cover before we get into the last 2 weeks and then the playoffs.
Yeah, it looks like we only have one team getting a rest this week, and in the Elkhorn Valley Braves get to take a little rest right before they get back into it. So
yeah, and like I said, look, like there it is, right? The Braves. Remember, I had a suggestion on how they could work it out to get all these teams the games they needed, but that ship has sailed. It needed to happen like whatever weeks ago, 5 or 6 weeks ago. So, all right, great job. We're going to see you week 11. We'll see you out there at the games. We'll see you next week on the East County Prep Football Report. For Dave Dickens, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.